The conversation now is, what about witnesses who testify before the Madlanga Commission? Because at the weekend, Marius Vlam van der Merwe executed outside of his Brakpan home on Friday night while opening his gate. He was killed by two shots of an AK-47. His wife and two children witnessing that killing. Now, Marius van der Merwe, he had in November testified before the Madlanga Commission, where he admitted to his part in when police had tortured and then killed a suspect. He was then ordered to dispose of the body. He had said before the Madlanga Commission that he had cooperated because of his own safety, out of fears that he would then be a target. But also what's interesting is that Marius van der Merwe had reportedly declined witness protection. He does run his own security company, him feeling that he could rather look after himself. Also under witness protection, he would probably have to give up some of his business and then also give up an income for his family. Joining me now is Chad Thomas, who is the director of IRS Forensic Investigations. Good morning, Chad. Really appreciate your time. The reaction and and outrage to this incident has been quite loud. The president has called this a heinous attack. The chairperson of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Police, Ian Cameron, says if witnesses believe stepping forward may cost their lives, accountability collapses. You have said this exposes a failed witness protection program. But you also have the Justice Minister, Mamaloka Kubai, confirming that van der Merwe had in fact refused protection. Where do we stand on this matter?
Very good morning, Lester. Morning to the listeners. When it comes to witness protection, we actually have a standalone piece of legislation regarding witness protection in South Africa. So it's not like it's something that's new or unusual. There are policies and protocols that are in place together with units within the Hawks, units within state security, as well as divisions within the NPA that are responsible for this. But one must remember, going into witness protection is a complete overhaul of one's life. It isn't just disruptive for the individual that's going into witness protection, but for the entire family. And like you said, you may have to give up on certain income earning opportunities. You don't know where you're going to be. You don't know how long you're going to be in witness protection for. So a lot of people would prefer to decline witness protection and take a chance on the fact that perhaps crime intelligence are keeping an eye on those that perhaps have it out for you and have their finger on the pulse, so to say. In this particular instance, Marius has lived a life over the past 2 years where he believed his life was in danger for a number of reasons. He was very active in Zama disruption operations. He was very active in the disbanding of an informal settlement known as Plastic City. He had got involved in the midst of turf wars between two warring factions of Zamas. So he felt that his life was in danger. But of course, when it comes to testifying at a commission of inquiry, and the very day that the commission of inquiry shuts down for the year, the witness that came out with the most shocking details is killed. In our industry, coincidence is very rare. So it is of grave concern that he's been taken out. It's of grave concern that we're going to have people now far more reluctant to come forward. And remember, his testimony was shocking in that it showed us that there were still killings taking place by law enforcement officials, much the same as we saw during the apartheid years with Vlakplaas for CCB, where bodies were being disposed of. It was frightening testimony. It brought home the reality that this wasn't just a mercenary operation in respect of people wanting to make money, but that there were lives on the line as well.
He testified of his cooperation. While he says it was under coercion, it was because he feared for his own life. But what did his testimony on the 14th of November tell you about? There may be people who have actively been part of murders or illegal operations now coming forward to say, I did participate, but I did so under coercion. What does that also tell you about future testimony of people who may now not come forward?
Having people come forward with that type of testimony, knowing full well that you aren't granted immunity or indemnity. This isn't a Section 204 process like one would see
Mm,
in criminal court. Shows bravery to an extent. It also shows perhaps that somebody's conscience has been playing at them. And in fact, one of the senior members of EMPD that was a friend of Marius has said that that particular incident had been bugging him for several years now since he had to dispose of that body. It kind of comes across as blasé though. Yeah, he's talking to senior members of EMPD about, having disposed of a body. Everybody knows about this by the
mm,
sounds of things, but nothing's ever been done about it.
yeah.
It shows this sheer shocking nonsensical issue of no value for life.
Mm.
For me, it's frightening. It's the testimony that we weren't expecting. We're expecting empire building. We're expecting people passing over others for promotion. We weren't expecting people getting killed and their bodies being disposed of and families being deprived of a loved one or an income generator.
With all regret and with condolence to his family, Chad, I also have to question his complicity in murders that have taken place, and that how 3 years later to come forward, he has a choice at the time of that incident saying, I would not want to participate. So I largely feel in this conversation around the Madlanga Commission and revelations and people coming forward years later, and of course, very much well, a conscience could be played on you. Could be playing on you. I still don't feel that this is a conversation currently in South Africa in the difference between angels and demons. There are no heroes in the story when we're talking about police corruption in this country.
Lester, to be very honest with you, when you listen to the testimony and you hear how Kwenazi allegedly looked across to him and it was almost a given that he was now going to be the person to dispose of the body, it didn't sound like the first rodeo. It sounded as if there was some type of relationship that existed. What shocked me, however, was when we saw Mkhwanazi on the stand. We were expecting this absolute monster. We were expecting this prime evil type character. And what we saw was more of a buffoon. We saw somebody that had hijacked essentially a metro policing outfit and very, very quickly under cross-examination by Advocate Mafia, which we have to admit she's done exceptionally well. She's emerging as one of our heroes in this particular inquiry. He quickly conceded to taking monies, gratuities from Cat Lala, etc. So we're not talking about a operation here that was run by masterminds. This is what perturbs me. We've got an issue where these guys are operating in plain sight, yet the average Joe isn't prepared to speak up because either they intrinsically linked to it and they're benefiting from it,
Mm,
or they're in fear of it.
yeah,
But either which way, we have a massive, massive
yeah.
problem.
What about this entanglement between national police, metro police, private security, dodgy politicians who may be in cahoots, for example, the on the Rand with Zama Zamas? It just seems like an entangled web of all these entities, including private security, who are part of this conversation of police and crime corruption.
You must remember that South Africa produced 40% of the world's gold to date. Gold was the backbone of the South African economy for decades. Johannesburg became an economic capital and the only economic capital in the world that didn't sit on a waterway, it didn't sit on a river, it didn't sit on the coast of a sea, simply because of its gold. Now we don't have that much regulated gold mining anymore. The industry's in free fall, but there's still massive amounts of money to be made from gold. We're talking about billions of rands in illicit trade. It's far greater than the illicit tobacco trade, which everybody knew was dangerous, where people were being taken out. Imagine now the people that are involved in the ecosystem of the illicit gold trade and how they will do anything to protect those billions of rands. One must remember a couple of years ago when Lesotho had an election cycle, it was said that the winning parties were funded from illicit gold in South Africa in that particular election. So South Africa isn't just making money through bad actors on the ground, but we've also got neighboring countries that are benefiting extensively from this illicit trade. So it's a hell of a problem that we have. And if we don't sort out the actual problem at hand with respect to Zamazama artisanal mining, we're going to continue with these type of issues, whether it's the illicit gold market, the illicit tobacco market, or all these mafias that have sprung up, be they water mafias, construction mafias, etc.
In a mafia state. Chad Thomas, really appreciate your time. IRS Investigations.